everybody. Welcome, Western Michigan University and the Michigan's Great Southwest, to what an exciting event tonight with Governor Romney. I don't know about you, but it is electric in here right now. Electric. Electric because we're talking about our future, our kids' future. I'm State Senator John Prose, and one of those blessed people who have the opportunity to serve 270,000 people in Southwest Michigan, making a difference in Lansing and turning Michigan around and putting it in the right direction, the same direction that Governor Romney is going to do for the United States of America, the same direction. As honored as I am, we have to give thanks to a couple people that are here, though, some people that need to be recognized, not the least of which is Dr. Dunn, the president of Western Michigan University. Thank you, Doctor. There's a couple of colleagues that I work with in the State House of Representatives. I believe Representative Margaret O'Brien is here, though I've not seen her yet. I know she was coming. And I also know that Representative Eric Nesbitt is here from Southwest Michigan, too. We're going to introduce a couple more people in a minute in this exciting event and this exciting opportunity for all of us to make a difference for Governor Romney in this election next Tuesday. It's just a few days away. But like any great event like this, we start with a bit of an honor to our nation, to our country, and to help me with that is one of my brothers in arms, one of the folks that I worked with very closely in the House of Representatives as we tried to right the ship and then have done so in these last couple of years with good, solid conservative leadership from people like Congressman Bill Huizenga. Please welcome him.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. My name's Bill Huizenga, and I'm one of those crazy freshmen. I'm one of the new guys, and guess what? We are having quite a time out there. Some of it good, some of it not so good, and that's why we are here tonight to change that. Absolutely, right? That's right. Well, as I mentioned, I'm one of those crazy freshmen. Heritage Action has ranked me as the 11th most conservative freshman in the House. National Journal, all right, National Journal today just came out. I am the second most conservative member in the Michigan delegation. I don't know how he snuck in front of me. Tim Walberg had 85. I had 84.3%. But when they broke it out on the economic issues, I was actually the #1 most conservative member from the Michigan delegation. And I only mention that because I know that Mitt Romney has that conservative philosophy that is going to change this country around. And sitting right behind us here, this is one of the main reasons that I ran. Well, not maybe the debt clock itself, but what it represents. And I have to admit, I love you all, but I love 3 of my 5 kids are with me tonight, and I love them even a whole lot more. And what we are doing to them right now is absolutely immoral. It is absolutely wrong that mountain of debt that we are piling on our kids and our grandkids. And it is hardworking taxpayers like you, the money that you send into the United States and into Washington and into Lansing. And we've got Speaker Bolger here who is doing an amazing job working with Governor Snyder. It is about making sure that we put our expenditures in line with our revenues, and we are clearly not doing that. So that is the reason I ran, the main reason I ran. And I got to tell you that Mitt's got the vision, the values, the plan of action that is going to turn this around. And I can tell you, we desperately need a new senator from the state of Michigan. Can I get an amen on that one? Amen. We desperately need those partners in the Senate who will actually do anything, something. Let's start with passing a budget. That would be nice. It's only been 3 years. And we need a man like Mitt Romney in the White House who's going to provide that vision to get this country turned around. He's got the business background. He's got that executive experience, which is a perfect example of what we need to do in Washington, D.C. So one last quick thing. I want to make sure, for those of you that are Twitterers and Facebook out there, we've got a hashtag. It's Mitt2012. So pound Mitt 2012 and at Mitt Romney. We just did a little photo with the four of us in the background. I'll be putting that up on Twitter as when the governor's coming in. So join me on that. Follow me at Bill Huizenga. And we've got to make sure that we are using every single opportunity that we can. Facebook, Twitter, internet, regular media. We've got to make sure that we drive people out for Tuesday's election because this is a critical, vital election. And what we're going to do now is we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, but this flag and what it represents is so important. And I know that you are here tonight because you care. You care about what each one of those colors represents. You care about the men and women who are serving in uniform, who are standing behind that flag for us every single day. And I will ask you to stand up and join me right now as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. How about a big hand for Congressman Bill Huizenga, one of those strong conservatives that is making a difference in Washington and is standing in the breach of the Obama administration, who does nothing more than this but pile more on each and every one of us and our kids. My three kids aren't here this evening, Bill, so we didn't have a ready-made photo op ready to go, but my three kids are the same reason that I'm here too. And I know full well that if I don't give the speaker his opportunity to say something soon, I'm going to get the hook. But I wanted to make sure you thought about one thing as you move forward in these next 72 hours. Think about the days that you're spending in the days ahead and how important and critical this is. You'll be at the grocery store where you can affect change for Mitt Romney for president. You'll be at a soccer game tomorrow, I have too, where you can affect change for Mitt Romney for president and where we can really make a difference. You'll be at church Sunday morning or Saturday night. You'll have the opportunity to remind people how important this election is. Tell me that you'll make a commitment right now to do that, to tell your friends, to tell your neighbors, to tell those folks at the soccer game that Mitt Romney is your choice and to go to the polls on Tuesday. Please help me welcome one of my great partners in all of this and a great friend, a leader that is making a difference with Governor Snyder, with Randy Richardville, with your state senator in Kalamazoo County, Tanya Shoemaker, and myself, John Prose. Please help me welcome Speaker Bolger.
Thank you very much. What an honor to be in this room. Not as a student. It was not that, well, okay, it was a long time ago. I was here in the Bernard Center as a student. Are there any Broncos in the room? All right, go Broncos. Oh, no. No, go Broncos. We're just going to leave it right there. Go Broncos. Is anybody in this room concerned about the future of our country? That's why you're here tonight. And all of us are going to mention our kids. I have two kids. One's going to turn 18 soon. The other night, our daughter turned 16. And you know what? That happens whether you're ready for it or not. But I'll tell you, as they're right at that point, embarking on their future, I'm concerned about my kids' future. I'm concerned about your kids' future. I'm concerned about our grandkids, whether they're here today or they're yet to come. It's that concern that drives us in the state capitol as we seek to turn around state government. As we've eliminated a $1.5 billion deficit and now have a $450 million surplus. As we've sought to make Michigan a better... Thank you. As we've sought to make Michigan a better place to find a job by making Michigan a better place to provide a job. It's that experience, it's that concern that drove me as I looked at the field and as I looked at the candidates and I looked at the future of our country. And I'd like to share with you very briefly why I made the decision to support Mitt Romney to be the next president. And that is because I looked for experience. And I saw that Mitt Romney has the private sector experience in job creation. He understands how to create a job. He understands that it's individuals who create jobs. I looked, he's got not only that experience, but he went into the Olympics. And he turned around the Olympics, brought honor and had a very successful Olympics, and left behind a surplus. I looked at his experience in Massachusetts, walking in the door facing a $3 billion deficit and leaving office with a $2 billion savings account. it became clear to me there was only one man with the experience to turn our country around, to join us as we seek to turn our state around. And I looked and I said, I've had enough of a one-term U.S. Senator as a president. We certainly don't need to nominate a one-term U.S. Senator to become president. Instead, I hope you'll join me in welcoming Governor Mitt Romney, the next President of the United States of America.
Thank you so much. What a welcome. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Congressman, Mr. Senator, quite a group. Thank you so much. Great to be with you. This is a special room for me. Oh, now sit down. Are there chairs? Oh, good. I didn't want to have you sit on the floor there. This is you guys are still up back there. How you doing? Hey. It's a special room because I understand that my parents campaigned here some years ago. That had been 1962, 64, or 66 when my dad ran for governor, or in 1970 when my mom ran for senator. So my dad and mom were in this room, this very room, and hopefully my dad's good luck running for governor in Michigan will rub off on me tonight. It's been a thank you. We were in Detroit this morning for the Detroit Economic Club, and then through Mount Clemens, and then drove here across the interstate, drove past Brighton. My parents' grave sites are there in Brighton. My dad, trust my dad. My dad is a very frugal man, and he checked all over for where the best deal was on a gravesite. And he found a place in Brighton, and it's not because we didn't live in Brighton. It's like, how did you pick Brighton, Dad? Well, best price I could find in the whole state. So if you're looking for the best deal on a gravesite, check Brighton. They got a good spot, and you're near the former governor and the former first lady. You know, I was last night. I was in a photo line and meeting some folks, and someone came up to me and he said, "I'm Tim Cowan's brother," and I knew immediately who he was. I didn't remember him. Tim Cowan was my friend in Cub Scouts. And I've got some pictures of Tim and me and our Cub Scout friends. And I just thought about Cub Scouts and what it was like growing up and what our parents must have thought as they were sending us off to Cub Scouts. They obviously believed in the promise of America. They knew that if they taught us the right values, and we'd learn them at home, we'd learn them at Cub Scouts, we'd learn them at church. If we had those kind of values, and if we got a good education, and if we were willing to work hard, they were confident that we'd be prosperous and secure. That was the American promise. It's always been quintessentially American to know that the future is brighter than the past, and that our kids will enjoy a better future than even the lives that we've lived. But today that promise is in question. And this is one of the reasons. $15.4 trillion. I remember when that began with a 14 in my campaign, all right? This thing's moving fast. And this is a real problem for the Cub Scouts of today and the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of today, because we keep on adding that kind of burden to them, and they won't have a bright future. They'll spend their time trying to pay off not just the debt, but the interest. And at some point, the interest rate, which is today extraordinarily low on that debt, at some point, people around the world are going to say, I don't have confidence in America. I'm not willing to loan money to America anymore unless they give me a higher interest rate. And when that starts to happen, our kids will have to pay through the nose because of our debts. I think it's bad economics, I think it's bad policy, and I think it's immoral for us to pass on burdens like that to the next generation. When candidate Obama was running for president, there were three things I heard him talk about. One was that he was going to cut that debt in half, all right? The annual deficit would be cut in half. Well, he's doubled it. $1 trillion debts now, every year. $1 trillion deficits. And then he was also going to get America working again. Remember that? He was on the Today Show right after his inauguration. He said, look, if I can't turn around the economy in 3 years, I'll be looking at a one-term proposition. We're here to collect, all right? We're taking it back. I mean, He did go out and say, let me borrow $787 billion, and I'll keep unemployment below 8%. Now we've gone through 36 straight months with unemployment above 8%. Then there was another promise. He talked about the threat of solvency for Medicare and Social Security and the need to secure those programs. Now, 3 years later, no ideas have been proposed. Serious ideas to balance Social Security and Medicare. And by the way, no plan to get America working again either. And also, no commitment to bringing down the deficit. Did you hear his State of the Union address the other night? Probably not. I did. I better listen. And so I listened to what he had to say. Long speech. You know, he's a good communicator. He does not have a failure to communicate. He has a failure to lead. And he... But he spent no time talking. I don't think he even mentioned the deficit or the debt. And this is at a time when you look around the world and you say, you know, this is kind of important. We're seeing what's happening in Europe when they haven't thought about their deficits and the accumulating debt of their various countries with Greece and Italy and Spain and even France and Ireland and Iceland. And we've got to be thinking about these things. And this president has had nothing to say about any one of those three things. Now, I'm a little concerned when you have a president that's out of ideas and out of excuses, and in 2012 he's going to be out of a job. Now, I want to restore America's promise. The promise that we know that if we have the right values and we work hard and we get education, that we can have a prosperous future and security. And to do that, we need more jobs, we need less debt, and we need smaller government. How do I go about doing that? Today I talked about, I appreciate that, thank you. Today we talked about how to go about doing that at the Detroit Economic Club. I said, first of all, I want to make sure that our employers, particularly small businesses, have the capital, have the incentive to keep growing and hiring people. And I thought, how do you go about doing that? Do you know how many workers in America in the private sector work for businesses that are taxed at the individual level? Not a corporate tax, but individual level. They're partnerships or sole proprietorships, so-called sub-S corporations, LLCs, and so forth. Do you know how many American workers work in that kind of business? 54% of all workers in this country work in those kinds of businesses. So I wanted to get the tax rate down for them. So I said, let's have an across-the-board 20% cut in tax rates for all Americans in our marginal tax rate so we can get small business growing and hiring again and get growth in this country. I also spoke about the deficit. Oh, by the way, let's compare that with President Obama's plan. His plan is to raise taxes. So he's going to take on small business the tax rate from 35% to almost 40%. And so if you're successful in a small business, I was at a restaurant today called Mitt's, believe it or not, yeah, and in Mount Clemens. So I went and saw Mitt's restaurant, and they're referring, of course, to the Michigan Mitt. I guess it's that way, right? The Michigan Mitt, and not to me, but it's the Michigan Mitt. And I said, you know, if you're successful and you're profitable, you realize that the federal government will take away 40% of your profit, and then the state government will take away, what is it, 5%? What's your tax rate here? 6. Wow, 6%. So now we're up a little higher, and then the city perhaps will take a little more. And that's if you're successful and profitable in starting a business. One of the reasons people are afraid of starting businesses and hiring people is that if they're successful, the government's going to take away about half. This doesn't make sense. So what's this president doing? Making it harder for small business to grow and thrive. Second area I talked about was this, the debt. And the debt is made up of every annual year's deficits. This president is on track by the end of 4 years to put in place as much public debt almost as all the prior presidents combined. Can you imagine that? That's what he's on track to do. And no plans to cut the deficit. Here's what I do. I'm going to do 3 things to balance our books. 1, I'm going to get rid of programs. I'm going to eliminate programs. I'm going to cut programs out of the federal government. I'm going to get a list of all the programs and look at what they're doing and how much they're spending and so forth, and then say this, is this program so critical it's worth borrowing money from China to pay for it? And if it doesn't pass that test, I'm getting rid of it. And by the way, the first one on that list is easy to get rid of. Obamacare. I'm going to get rid of Obamacare. And there's a long list of others. And then I'm going to take programs that we do need to keep, but ones that can be run better at the state level and send money back to the state and say, you run this, we're going to cap how fast it grows, but you run it and make it more effective. We have 47 different job training programs in Washington, reporting to 8 different federal agencies. All the bureaucrats, all the money spent on deciding who qualifies for what program. Let's take that money, give it back to the state, let you fashion your own program so that you can train your own workers for the jobs of tomorrow. And let's get the federal government out of all of these programs and let them be run at the state level, run more efficiently. And one more thing I'm going to do with regards to the federal budget, and that is I'm going to take what's left of government after I've cut those programs and sent some back to states. I'm going to take what's left in Washington. I'm going to cut employment by 10% through attrition. And then I'm also going to say we're going to link the pay of government workers with the pay in the private sector. I don't think people who work for government should get more than the people who are paying for them. This is a critical time for this country. I grew up in a home where my mom and dad loved America and believed in this country. My dad grew up poor. He never graduated from college. He was a lath and plaster carpenter. He convinced my mom to marry him, and they went across the country on their honeymoon. My dad sold paint out of the back of the car to pay for gas and hotel bills. But his lack of education and upbringing in a modest home did not keep him from achieving extraordinary things, becoming governor of this great state, perhaps being his greatest and most proud achievement. I once asked him, what's the thing you're most proud of? This was when he was in his late 80s. And without any hesitation, he said, raising you 4 kids. This is the thing that brought him the greatest happiness and joy in life. When we were kids, he put us in his car and drove us across the country, my brother and sisters and me, so we could see the beauty of the country. I learned to love the beauty of America. There's a song I love, one of our national anthems, America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty across the fruited plain. I love the beauty of America. Another verse. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. Would our veterans in this room please stand, and members of our active duty or armed services at any branch, please stand and be recognized. Thank you so much. Thank you. And one more verse that I'll mention. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. The idea of the songwriter was that the patriots, the founders, the ones who wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, were not just writing for their times, but they saw beyond the years. And the principles they put in those documents were not just a blueprint for a moment, but a blueprint for time, for our time, and for the future. Our president today is changing America in fundamental ways, ways we wouldn't even recognize, making us more like Europe. That's not where we need to go. The right course for America is not to be transformed into something different, but to restore the principles that made us the hope of the earth. And that document, the Declaration of Independence, said that we were endowed by our Creator with our rights. Not the state, not the king, but our Creator. And among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We would be free in this country to pursue happiness as we choose, not based upon the circumstance of birth, not based upon the direction of government, but instead by our own choice we could decide what we want to do with our life, where to live, where to go to school, whether to go to school, whether to start a business, whether to work for someone else's business. These choices are ours. By virtue of that freedom and our political freedoms and personal freedoms, people from all over the world came here seeking freedom, seeking opportunity, dreamers, pioneers, innovators. America has led the world in innovation, in part because of the the brilliance of the founders and the inspiration of Providence that helped them write those words and embody them in the Constitution. That's who we are. I want to stop that clock and reverse it. I want to start getting America on a fiscal sound footing again. I want to get good jobs coming back. I want to get our economy competitive and the best in the world. I want to make sure that we finally tackle our problems. I'm convinced that if we have a president that'll tell the truth and will live with integrity, who knows how to lead because he's led before, and who actually goes to the American people and asks them to sacrifice. By the way, you don't need a leader if all you want to hear is what your free stuff is going to be. You need a leader to say, this is what America needs to do to stand up. I saw after the last election, it was on the internet, a picture of someone at a rally for the new president, and it was a sign saying, where's my free stuff? All right? If you want a president who can promise you more, can assure you that you're going to have government take care of you from cradle to grave, that you're entitled to whatever you want, that's not me. You've already got that president. I'm going to be a leader that's going to call on the greatness of the American people and the patriotism of our passion and make sure that America remains, as it's always been, the hope of the earth. Thank you so much. Now it's your turn. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, you guys. Now, questions. All right, we got one right here. We've got some questions here tonight, so I'm going to take some of your questions. You're already up here with a question. Here, I'll give you you got a microphone back there? There you go. Hi, how are you?
Mr. Governor Pete Strauss, Mayor of the City of Portage. As mayor, as you probably know, that I can't get through a grocery store out of the gas station without people cornering me about what's going on in this country. Two things that I'm hearing from the citizens of this region. One is gas is at $4, going to be going up. What is this president doing wrong? What are you going to do about it? And the second thing is corruption in Washington, D.C. Solyndra, $500 million. What is this president going to do about correcting that? When ahead's going to roll, and what are you going to do about it?
Oh, good, thank you. They like the question. You hear that? Getting applause for the question. Wait till you hear the answer. Then applaud. Okay, let's see. First of all, let's see. What do we do about gas prices? I think the American people know that to a certain degree, gas prices are driven by what's happening around the world. Supply and demand. The demand in China and Brazil and India and right here is going to drive, to a certain degree, gas prices. But the American people want to see the president's trying to do something about it. And he's not just sending money outside the country to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, in many cases to people who don't like us very much. So they're going to be happy with the president who says, as I will, on my first day, on the lands that are already approved for drilling, I'm going to give licenses to people already approved to drill and finally get our oil and our gas out of the ground. And I'm going to pass the first no-brainer test this president has so obviously failed. And that is I'm going to bring in oil from Canada through the Keystone Pipeline. I mean, this is a no-brainer. And then your other question, and it's Solyndra. It's broader than Solyndra. What this president has ushered in is something you see in certain nations around the world. I won't mention names at this point, but the idea is where the government thinks they know better than the free marketplace how to make an economy work. So they decide which sectors to give special deals to and which companies to give money to. It's called crony capitalism in some places, where the people who are friends of the politicians get the money for their businesses. It's not a surprise that a lot of the people that have gotten a lot of money from the Obama administration for their businesses happen to be big Democratic fundraisers. All right? And so you've seen it in Solyndra and a car company called Fisker, another car company called Tesla. I'm sure you knew America desperately needed 2 electric car companies in California, one of which makes their cars in Finland for us, paid for by our government. They're taking your money to invest in the businesses of their friends. And I hope, let me mention something else to you that I'm sure you can appreciate as you think about it, as I have. I spent my career, as you know, in the private sector, in business. And for a while, one of the things I did was help start businesses. They call that venture capital. We raised money from other people, by the way, from endowments and of universities, even from a church, not mine, but someone else's. And and from various individuals and so forth, gave us their money, and then we used that to help start businesses. And we'd listen to ideas and try and choose those that we thought would be successful. So I know something about how businesses start. The president wanted to see more solar energy. So he says he gave $500 million to Solyndra. Let me tell you what the impact of that is in the real world. My guess is there were at least 100 different entrepreneurs with ideas in solar energy in this country, all thinking they had the best idea for the new solar energy idea of the future. They were out there all looking for capital to get started, maybe $1 or $2 million from a venture capitalist or from a series of friends or maybe a public offering. They're all going to go out there. When he chooses Solyndra to give $500 million to, those guys can't get any more money. Because anybody looks and says, why would I give money to you, $2 million, when the government's giving $500 million to your competitor? So instead of encouraging solar energy and new technology, he actually dampened the prospects. And by his choice, by the way, of one that went bankrupt, he set it back immeasurably. He doesn't understand that free markets and free people and the American system are the best way to get people to work and to solve problems, not the heavy hand of Washington. I see two mitts. Will you guys put those mitts up there? Let me see those again. Look at those things. I don't know where you got those, but those are pretty cool. Thanks, you guys. I see a question way back there. Yes, sir. There's a gentleman back there with a microphone. Hi.
Hello there. Our president recently directed the Office of Management and Budget to zero funding for the planetary exploration. This savings is a very small percentage of NASA's budget, but it causes NASA to renege on 2 contracts with European allies that are both heavily invested. This also puts a halt to any hopes of a future manned space program beyond Earth orbit. Those that are in the know say that if we were to bypass the moon, we could land humans on Mars before the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. With our political system, no president can successfully launch such a program with a timetable beyond 8 years. But with funding in place at an annual average far less than $5 billion, the first crew could be launched in May of 2018 and land in November. Would a Romney administration be willing to commit this country to opening the Martian frontier?
Not without a lot of work and a lot of study, all right? Because from my standpoint, the work that we do in basic science is good work and creates long-term jobs. It's like investing in a business. You invest in research and development. And you know, as the chief executive, let's say, of a company, a major company, you're probably going to be out of your job before the returns on that investment in research pay off. But you do it nonetheless to build for the future. And so we make decisions as to where we're going to make that investment. We do it at the National Institute of Health. We do it at NASA. We do it in our military. We have places where we make investments to build for the future. And I'm very much open and in favor of making those long-term investments. But I want to have an understanding of what we expect to get from them, what kind of commercial potential there would be for our businesses, what kind of military applications there might be, because obviously what's happening in space is potentially going to be of significance to our ability to secure ourselves. And so that's something I'd have to study in some depth. And, of course, I would look to people who are expert scientists to consider the different options we have and make that investment. So I can't commit to that now because I want to study it a heck of a lot more. But I also have to make sure that our first commitment is to ask ourselves, okay, is this something we can do within our budget without borrowing money? Because I'm not going to be adding to this clock. And I know China is headed to the moon. They're planning on going to the moon, and some people say, oh, we got to get to the moon. We got to get there in a hurry to prove we can get there before China. It's like, guys, we were there a long time ago, all right? And you know, when you get there, would you bring back some of the stuff we left? You know what? Thank you. Yes, sir. The big stretch there. Hi.
I'm a home builder here in Kalamazoo. I'm Dave Roberts, and what are you going to do for housing, both for builders and for real estate agents? It's really tough. What's your ideas?
Well, thank you. My grandfather was in housing. That's why my dad grew up poor. It's tough, isn't it? It's this up and down. My grandfather was a contractor and went broke more than once. He went from Los Angeles to Idaho. Well, he started in Mexico, then Los Angeles, Idaho, Utah. And my dad and his brother, I remember picking up a phone call between my dad and my uncle, and they were talking about paying off some loans of their dad, who had since passed away. So it's tough. And right now, this has been, I don't think I've, in my lifetime, ever seen it like this. And Michigan has been hit as hard as anyone. And so congratulations to you for still being in the business and keeping things together. That probably means you've been a fiscally conservative business person during these times. It's the guys that get overextended that get in real trouble. The best thing I can do for housing in this country is to get people working again, is to make sure that we have good jobs and people are coming out of school like this one, this great institution, and they can find a job that's willing to pay them a good wage. I heard an interesting line from Dick Armey. He said, the American dream is not owning your own home anymore. The American dream is getting your kids out of your own home. And so we need to get people back to work and having new families formed and have those new families buy homes. And as we have more demand for homes, you'll finally see the prices come back up again. That's the best thing I can do. I can also do my very best to hold down tax rates, make sure people keep more of their money so they're able to buy. We also need to make sure that for middle-income families that the deductibility of mortgage interest continues to be part of the incentive for owning a home. So I will do those things and do my very best. But I can tell you one thing. I know the president's trying to find some way to try and turn the market around to stand. It's like standing in the Mississippi and trying to stop the flow of the Mississippi. We really have to let the market get people back to work, start buying homes, and start raising home prices again. And it's a high priority. It's something I'm going to fight to do. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
A lot of concerns that I hear from people is that so many things get stalled in the Senate in that. And you have a lot of good ideas in that, but do you have a plan on being able to work through this without compromising?
Yeah, thank you. Darn good question. And I need Congressman Huizenga to come over here and tell what it's like out there. Yeah, Pete Hoekstra, all right, is what he's saying. One, I'd like to have some more Republicans in the Senate, of course, and see a majority in the Senate. But I will not fall prey to the mistake this president made. When he came into office, he had a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. He actually had a supermajority in each house. And he thought, I don't need Republicans. I can just go off and do whatever the heck I want to do. I don't need any Republican votes for Obamacare. And America did everything in our power to keep Obamacare from happening. We even elected a Republican in Massachusetts, all right? And yet he found a way to get around it and push through his plan. And he did not reach out. He said in his campaign he was going to unite the country and be bipartisan, reach across the aisle. He said health care reform would only occur if it was bipartisan. He pushed all that aside. And he did it in part, I think, because he found he didn't need Republicans. Now, I'm a little more experienced in being in a place where there's opposition. In my little state of Massachusetts, my legislature was 85% Democrat. So I found I needed Democrats, all right? I met with the Senate President and the Speaker of the House when I first came to office. And it was very encouraging because we'd had a bruising campaign. They'd campaigned for my opponent, of course. They're loyal to their party and to her candidacy. But I went to their office. The Senate President said to me, Mitt, the campaign's over. We've been elected to serve the people. Now let's do it. And we disagreed on most issues. But we found there were some places where we had common ground. They didn't want to raise taxes any more than I did because they knew that would hurt jobs, scare away industries, hurt families. So we agreed we'd try and cut back on spending. I remember because we had respect for one another, in part, when we got into real trouble, early on we faced a financial crisis. We didn't think we could pay our bills coming soon. I went to them and said we need to cut, I think it was about $500 million out of the budget immediately, not just slow down the rate of growth of government. We need to cut immediately. And I proposed, I said, look, will you give me the unilateral power to cut anything from the budget I want? That will take a special act of the legislature to do that. And they agreed. They said, okay, because I'm sure they recognized they didn't want to do the cutting, all right? Let the Republican hang himself, all right? And so they passed a bill giving me the power to cut spending, and I did. I cut a lot of things I didn't like having to cut, but I learned to work with them. By the way, halfway through my administration, I published a brochure, a big 4-color, type thing, multiple pages. I stuffed it in the, well, I didn't personally stuff it in. I put it in, it was put in the Boston paper and sent to all the homes. It was my half-year report card, the things I'd accomplished. And I'd paid for it. And so my picture was on the cover. But so was the picture of the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. Because I couldn't do anything without them. I didn't want to attack them. We had to work together. That has to happen, finally, in Washington. We have to have a president who will stop worrying about himself and start worrying about the country. And I'm going to do that. Yes, sir. These guys on the way back, I can't even see back there, but yeah, hi. There's a guy waving his arms. Hi.
Hi. With the unemployment rate being about 8.5%, and recently I believe that the unemployment dropped to about 351,000 new people that went on their rolls. Why don't you or any other Republican candidate out there talk about the fact of the underemployed or those who have absolutely fallen off the track? And if we talked about that, the true unemployment is probably around 12, 13, or 14%.
Yeah.
Nationally.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Even if you use the numbers the president uses, the roughly 8.3% number, if the percentage of Americans in the workforce was the same today as it was when he was elected, that number would be about 10%. All right? That's just using the current measure. But then if you go to the further measure, the number of people who've dropped out of the workforce and those that can only get part-time work, who need full-time work, the underemployed, the number gets up to almost 15%. You got a lot of people in this country really hurting. And you can't be in a campaign like this one that I'm in without seeing those people and understanding how difficult life is for them. I don't know if any of you have been unemployed for a long period of time, but I had a responsibility in my church for a while where I was the pastor of my congregation. We don't have a paid minister in my church. We were given that assignment. I did it for about 10 years. And I've seen people who've been out of work for a long period of time. It shakes up marriages. Sometimes people become depressed, lose their faith. It's tough. You've got a lot of people in real trouble in this country. I don't think the president understands that his policies have really hurt folks. Look, he thinks that he's made things better. He's made things worse. You ask anybody in small business, or big business for that matter, has Obamacare made it more likely for them to hire people or less? Less. All right. Has Dodd-Frank, that banking regulation, made it easier for banks to make loans or harder? All right. How about his National Labor Relations Board policy and card check, pushing that, his pro-union stances? Has that made it more likely for businesses to want to go out and hire? Absolutely not. How about promises of raising taxes? He's got one out there now. Does that make it more likely for an entrepreneur to want to start a business? Do you realize the number of business startups, people just getting going, has dropped by 100,000 a year from 2008 until now? And the list goes on. This president has not made America go back to work. It's in spite of his policies that the hard work of the American people is slowly rebuilding our economy. But we got to get him out of the way and his policies gone if we're really going to get America back to work. Thank you. Hi. Over here? Over there. Either one of you can hand the microphone. Oh, look, I got a person right here. It's even easier. Hi.
Governor, my name is Pat Sabota. I'm just a mom and a grandmom. You're a dynamic speaker. You're a great communicator. Everything you said about the economy, I'm really excited about. Really enjoyed hearing. My husband and I were out of town for a month, and we got home on Monday. And since Monday, let me preface that by saying I know you really want the nomination in Michigan, because since I came home on Monday, I have received 9 phone calls. 9 of them. And I have to admit, I don't remember the contents very much, a couple of them, one or two, but basically it was questioning the integrity of one of the candidates that you're running against, Rick Santorum. Now, my question, Mr. Governor Romney, is why should we regard you as a man of high standards and integrity when you have flip-flopped on your position regarding the sanctity of life? Okay, let me say a little bit more. You turned your back on your Mormon religion's pro-life stance, just like Ted Kennedy and Nancy Pelosi did, betrayed their Catholic faith, and you ran as a pro-choice candidate for the Senate in Massachusetts. After you lost that senatorial election, you ran then as a pro-choice candidate for governor in Massachusetts. And while you were governor under Romney Care, just like Obama, you mandated that Catholic hospitals had to prescribe medications that cause abortions. That's my understanding. Now you are running for the Republican nomination for president against men, especially Santorum, whose pro-life credentials are well known. And you have changed your position, and you have become a pro-life candidate. How can we consider you trustworthy when it comes to time to appoint Supreme Court justices, to implement health care plans, although I hope you're correct and get rid of it, and allocate funds to organizations that promote abortion?
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. First of all, I'm disappointed to hear you received 9 calls. You should have received a lot more by now. That's number one. Number two, I was pro-choice. And then when I became governor, the first time a piece of legislation reached my desk that dealt with the sanctity of human life, I simply could not sign on to taking human life. The measure in question came in when I was governor for maybe a year or two. It was a measure that would redefine when life began, saying it began not at conception but sometime later. And they would have allowed cloning and what I called embryo farming, creating new embryos for the purposes of testing. I simply could not sign it, would not sign it, wrote an op-ed in the Boston paper, the Boston Globe, and said, I am pro-life. I cannot sign into this. I was consistent as governor, as a pro-life governor. And by the way, the Massachusetts Citizens for Life, the premier pro-life organization in my state, pro-family organization, wrote a letter about 3 or 4 weeks ago saying Mitt Romney was an avid pro-life, pro-family, pro-traditional marriage governor. So that was my record as governor. And then I ran for president 4 years ago and also ran as a pro-life presidential candidate. By the way, Ronald Reagan was pro-choice before he became pro-life, all right? George Herbert Walker Bush was pro-choice and then became pro-life. Henry Hyde was pro-choice and then became pro-life. And I'm not even sure, there's some others you mentioned who I think also long ago may have been pro-choice as well, but became pro-life. We need people who recognize that pro-life is the way to go, and we're getting more and more people joining our cause as time goes on. And I could tell you, you have in me, you have the occasion to look at what I did as governor. And by the way, we didn't. Your information about our health care plan providing for Catholic hospitals, that actually just isn't the case. A court in our state decided anyone who was receiving subsidized care was entitled to abortion on a very inexpensive basis. That was decided before our law was passed. That had nothing to do with our law whatsoever. But you can look at my record. You can look at my last campaign, my campaign now, the type of justices I will appoint. People like Roberts, Alito, Thomas, Scalia. I've indicated if I'm president, I will, by the way, I will not fund Planned Parenthood or Title X. And Senator Santorum voted for Planned Parenthood and Title X. He said the other night in the debate, as you recall, that sometimes you have to take one for the team. Well, my team is the people of the United States of America, and I'm a pro-life person. I'll be a pro-life president. Thank you. Over here. You got a guy right next to you. Go ahead with the microphone. There you go. Oh, it looks like you got a written question. I'm always worried when I see a written question.
Oh,
that's
yes,
right.
oh, yeah. I really want to just thank you.
Oh, good.
You put your money where your mouth is. You paid over $3 million in taxes and that's 3 to 11 times the amount of taxes that your opponents paid. I really do want to thank you, because I would rather have $3 million than $263,000 or $994,000 to help run our government. Thank you so very much. I hope that they bring that out in the press. It's a lot of money, and you paid a lot of it.
I know, by the way, there's, without question, when I have the occasion, if I'm fortunate enough to have your support, and I'd like your support, when I have the occasion to become the nominee and to debate with Barack Obama, get ready. He will attack me for my success. I will not apologize for my success any more than I'll apologize for America. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dieter Jasper. I'm actually an immigrant from Germany, and this will be my first election that I be able to vote in.
Excellent.
So very exciting.
Excellent. Wonderful.
You know, the one question I wanted to ask you is about the debates. There were so many of them, and I got very disappointed. Instead of all your candidates fell prey to the liberal questions from the press. So little, tiny little, what do you believe here, what do you believe there? Instead of turning it around and giving your vision, your concrete plan on what you are going to do. This is such an opportunity, but you have to take it to a bigger level. Like tonight you're telling what you're actually going to do, concretely. So this has to be done in the debates when people are watching, and I did not find this. I watched about 8 or 9 of them. I think there were 20, you know.
We've had 20.
I watched 8 or 9.
We've also had 5 forums, and the forums have been a better occasion to do that, by the way. Mike Huckabee had a forum, a couple of them.
Yes.
Where we got to go, and that was probably better.
I saw that too. But, you know, in general, you know, it would be great. May I ask you one question, though?
Yeah, please.
Also?
And by the way, I think it'd be wonderful if you're willing to moderate the next debate.
I would be a good timekeeper of being German, you know. Nobody would go over the time. I have one more question about the oil, about gasoline prices. Yeah. From what I'm learning, what I'm understanding is that we had a very mild winter, and there was a lot of reserves in gasoline, and the prices were until recently fairly low. However, instead of keeping this oil here on shore, even the oil companies got this oil from our public lands, from the country of the United States that we as taxpayers own. They decided to turn around and ship this oil to China, where they can get more money, leaving us with less gasoline over here, raising our prices. This is a situation that I understand that we're in right now. What can you do, even if we drill more, even if we get more our own oil, which I'm really for, what will keep the oil companies from just going to the highest bidder with the oil from our lands as well?
Well, they will go to the highest bidder. I mean, the nature of a free enterprise system is people who own the land and who drill for the oil and who get the oil will sell it to the highest bidder, and so there'll be a world price. But the highest bidder for energy here, without the transportation cost of moving it across the country, will be here. So if you have the Keystone Pipeline, for instance, bringing oil down here and we refine it here, it's going to stay here. And if we have ample supplies of energy here, natural gas used for long haul trucks and for fleets, as well as our own oil, and we use that right here, we'll be able to moderate the spikes, the ups and downs, the craziness that comes from these oil cartels. We can't change the price of oil around the world, but we can make sure that in this country we don't have the kind of enormous swings that you're seeing right now by taking advantage of our own resources right here. That's my own view. Yeah, yes, right here. Yeah.
Hi, our township recently is in process of applying for a grant from MDOT, and MDOT uses federal funds. The project was scheduled around $400,000, and they said, well, sure, we'll be happy to work with you on this grant, but you're going to have to follow all these rules that come with the federal money. So instead of a $400,000 project, it's now a $500,000 project. That's all these strings attached from Davis-Bacon to a whole host of other things. That same thing's happening to our road money that's coming back from the federal government. How can you tackle that? Because that's going to have the biggest impact on our road system.
Yeah, and it's not what you're talking about in the road system is also happening in small businesses. People who are trying to drill for natural gas have the EPA telling them you can't necessarily frack. We've always had fracking. That's putting fluid in the ground to push out the oil or the gas. We've been doing that in oil wells. I'm told some 60, 70% of oil wells use fracking technology. And that's all regulated by the states. Now the federal government wants to get on top, regulate on top. You realize what it takes, an environmental impact study. You want to build a kind of, some road, you got to do an environmental impact study. I'm convinced that if we had the environmental impact study regulators like we have today in the time of Dwight Eisenhower, we would not have an interstate highway system. All right. There's no way we could have built our highways. We wouldn't be able to have harbors. We wouldn't be able to dredge the harbors. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine the work they'd go through? And we can sit here for years and years and years. I mean, we got Asian carp that threaten the Great Lakes. How many years and years and years and years will it take them to figure out that's a problem? Stop it. Figure out the right ways to get it done. I mean, this is My own view is that in many of these settings, and I think the highways may be one of them, why is it the federal government taxes people in Michigan on gasoline, then takes the money to Washington, then decides how to give it back to Michigan, and what highways you can have, and how you can have it, and how you have to pay Davis-Bacon rates? It's like, wait a second. It's tax paid by the Michigan people. Why shouldn't the Michigan people be able to direct how that money's being used? And so I look throughout Washington with this question. Can't we send this work that's being done by government back to the people? And if we can't send it to the people, can't we send it back to the state and get the federal government out of it? The federal government is simply too large, too oppressive, too overwhelming, too expensive. It's just crushing the entrepreneurial spirit. It's crushing cities and towns. And if I go to Washington, I got to fix that. It's going to be, what's it going to be, 16? 16, I mean, what will it be? By the time, if I'm lucky enough to get inaugurated in January of 2013, that number is going to be 16-something, and or more. I've got to get that fixed and cut back on the spending of Washington. I've got to make sure that we can save Medicare and Social Security. I've got to make sure that we do the things necessary to get our economy growing again and get people back to work. We got some work to do. And the best way to do a lot of those things is not to have Washington figure out the answers, but to get them to the people and get them to the states where we have plenty of smart people and capable individuals who can do that job. So if I'm the president, I'm going to do that. Now, I know there's some more hands up here, and we promise you we'd only keep you an hour, and we're over that time. I'm getting the cutoff. I won't make the sign of the cutoff because there are a lot of cameras around here, and that'll be used against me down the road. Just like Michael Dukakis' hat in that tank. There's some things you cannot do in politics anymore. But I want to say to you how much I appreciate your being here tonight. I want you to go out and vote. We joke in my state, vote early, vote often. But here, just vote at least once. The best way you can vote often is take a friend with you. Find someone who hasn't voted and get them to come along with you to the polls. If you like what you heard tonight, tell your friends. If you didn't like what you heard tonight, stay home. No, I'm kidding. Get out and vote, whoever you're going to vote for. We need to take America back. This is a critical time. Thanks, you guys. Great to be with you. Thank you.